too often times we hear people talk about what we don't have or what they wish we had. So my approach to this is just to help share with people what all is available. When people start to become more engaged, then it just makes everything richer. Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to our community, coming to you live from the I've Decided studios here in Peoria. And our community podcast, which happens monthly, Erik, I don't know if you knew that or not, and I'll introduce Erik in just a second, is a part of the I've Decided community. We do it every month, and we have this conversation about Kim's weekly winning word for this particular week. And the word this week is flexible. But before we get into that, let's introduce Erik Christian with HR Fit. He's principal consultant with HR Fit, and he is my guest today. And Erik, tell us a little bit about who you are and what is HR Fit and how can it help some of our viewers out there.
I would be happy to. Thanks for having me, Andy.
You are welcome.
I've Decided, and hello to the community. Erik Christian with HR Fit. We are a human resources consulting firm. And we provide full service HR consulting, helping employers of all types and sizes with their HR needs. And so we help small mom and pop type shops. We help larger employers. We help private sector, of course, and then nonprofits and public sector. And we meet the client where they're at to try to help them with whatever HR needs they might have. Maybe that's boots on the ground HR outsourcing. Maybe it's more training and professional development. Maybe it is more helping out with setting their HR strategy. Sometimes it's more acute issues. There might be an investigation or something that needs to happen. And so we're able to step in and give them that service where they need it. There's 5 full-time staff in addition to me, and we're based here in Peoria. We just had our 7th birthday last week.
Nice.
And so we kind of keep growing. There seems to be a need for this kind of thing.
Yeah. And I can tell you that Erik's been a great resource for the Y. And you don't have to you're not on necessarily retainer with a company, or you can kind of just fly in and, hey, we got a need. Can you help us work through this issue? And you guys are always available and flexible to do that. But I imagine it could be the alternative, right, too, where you're just there kind of day to day, month to month, week to week.
Depends on what the client needs. We've got plenty of them where we are their HR department, so to speak, and we are taking care of the thing on a regular basis. And there's other folks who pick up the phone and give us a call when they need us, and other folks set us up for projects. So if it's in that HR space, we're able to help out.
Is most of your business small business, not-for-profit business? Is that a good chunk of it?
I would say that the majority of it are private sector at this point, businesses that are probably in that kind of 20 to 50 employee range. Most of them are south of 100 employees, but we help bigger businesses as well. That tends to be more kind of coaching, tends to be more project based, but a lot of private sector, but a fair amount of nonprofits. We have a lot of nonprofit clients, and that's kind of a different animals as well. And then public sector clients as well, we help out.
Yeah. So I know in our perspective, it's been a great resource because it's hard to have the capacity to hire an HR professional, right? And that cost that comes with it. So it's an affordable option for us to work with HR Fit and get some of our the challenges that we're faced with to help us work through those and think through those. So definitely a great resource. I encourage anyone out there to explore it and give Erik a call. He's certainly accommodating and available to have that conversation. So let's talk about the weekly winning word this week is flexible. And then Kim wrote a really nice article this week, and she really framed that around the concept of mental flexibility, the importance of having good mental flexibility and what that means for us in order to be successful in our lives. So let me define it first and take this straight out of Kim's article and her resource this week. But she defined it as being ready and able to change so as to adapt to different circumstances. And I think that we could easily agree that, hey, it's important to be flexible. When you're working in an HR environment, you've got to be flexible, right? You've got to be able to work with a lot of different employees who have a lot of different needs and a lot of different challenges, and flexibility is critical for all of us to be successful. But I want to share I'm going to read a statement to you, and I just want you to tell me what you think about it and whether or not you agree. So, in order for us to maximize our potential for success, we have to have a strong ability to adapt and to change. Right? Do you agree with that?
Of course. Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. I felt like you probably would. It's pretty straightforward, but having the ability to change and to be flexible and is so important. And I think over the last couple years, and it seems like this comes up every time I have a podcast, we've been forced to change a lot over the last couple years just because of the impacts of the pandemic. Good or bad, doesn't matter. There's just been a lot of change. We've had to navigate all of that. And if you're resistant to that, it's harder to be successful. But a lot of people struggle with change, and why do you think that is? Why do you think people are so challenged with change?
Because it requires them to adapt and do something new, think about things differently. You've got to expend some mental energy, maybe some physical energy to try to change that. And you're in kind of the unknown in some regards. What am I going to do to try to adapt to this change? Will this be successful? Will it not? I think it's something that everybody struggles with. And boy, we've all had to get used to it in the last 2 years, right? With the onset of the pandemic. Yep. And some of that's good. Some of that can be more of a challenge. Before the broadcast, we were talking about how the impact of video conferencing and things like that has impacted things, and as I said, for my business, that has, in some regards, it's been great because we're able to reach people more broadly than they were before. Right. Yeah. And they had before it's like, I need you right here. And now we can just hop on a meeting and away we go. But at the same time, there are many instances where that is not nearly as beneficial. Right. It is really hard. It's really hard for employers to build culture, for instance, when everybody's remotely. I mean, like your workplace is your living room or kitchen table or whatever.
Relationships are different, aren't they?
They're different. And I think employers have to be a lot more intentional about how they go about that. So without getting us off on a tangent, that's how it strikes me kind of from my world of why it's so hard for folks to adapt to that change. They might not have the tools to know exactly what to do. And then there's just a lot of trepidation that comes with whether or not it's going to work.
Yeah, I think it's easier for us kind of stay in our lane, right? We're comfortable there. And in order to change, you got to become uncomfortable. And I think that's scary for folks. I think it's scary for everyone. But those that can overcome that uncomfortableness and kind of step outside their comfort zone a little bit and challenge themselves to learn something new or do something differently, ultimately is going to make them better overall. But yeah, I agree with you. It's not easy. So in Kim's article, she framed up 3 ways that we can improve our mental flexibility. And the first one is, and I think it's I don't know. To me, it's probably the most important. Maybe it's not for some, but your vocabulary. How do you talk to yourself, right? Do you talk negative to yourself, or are you positive in the way that you speak to yourself? And that's the first one. So what are your thoughts on that? We were talking a little bit before the show, and I know that's one that kind of resonated with you.
It was. I think that's so important. If we start internally, that's so important for ourselves, right? Because we need to make sure that we are in a space where we're feeling, positive, that we can tackle whatever challenges might be out there. Because I know this is something that's really important in my world in terms of kind of consulting and HR consulting in particular. If I'm not feeling like there's a way to solve a problem, my clients aren't going to have a lot of confidence in it either, right? So I need to come at it with a positive mindset. And the language that I use for my own self-talk is going to, and I'm as bad about it as anybody. I did something stupid this morning, and there were some words that I gave myself, right? But But you need to move off of that quickly and start having this solution focused mindset. And then how you speak to other people, I think is also important. We talk as a staff about, our clients they already have a problem. They're already facing something. And so part of the value we can bring is this level of kind of confidence and calm, saying like, we're going to figure this out. Yeah. And so once there's a little bit more stability, now people can kind of think more clearly. We can rationally come up with whatever kind of solution might be there. But, whenever there's something that's coming up, we really, let's stop, take a beat, and think about really what we're looking at. You're going to be might be gripped with some fear or anxiety about this, but let's really think about what it is that we're dealing with, and then shift our focus towards the solution. Because there's a way to fix, pretty well anything, right? We can get hung up in this notion that this is this unsolvable thing and nothing's going to be the same. We can figure it out, and having a good positive mindset yourself, and using positive language, however cheesy that might sound to some folks, I think is incredibly important.
Yeah, I like what you said is kind of the carryover from having positive self-talk is then it's easier to have positive talk with others, right? And that's impactful. And people need that. People respond well to that. Anybody out there who is in a position where they manage other people, you get more out of employees when you treat them with respect and you encourage them. And yeah, there's always challenging conversations that are going to take place, but even in that instance, you can take a positive approach to how you deal with that challenge. And in my experience, there's always more fruit on that limb or on that tree than taking the negative approach. But it starts here, right? If I don't have it myself, how can I share it with others? And it is so critical. And it can be cheesy. We all grew up watching Saturday Night Live, right? And we know who Stuart Smalley is and positive affirmations. And it's a cheesy little skit, but there's so much truth in that. No, I don't sit in front of a mirror and tell myself that I'm great and that people like me and all that stuff. But if you beat yourself up all the time, that has a profound impact on our success, I think, because then it becomes mental, right? And it's a challenge to overcome. But I really appreciate the connection that you made to how you work with others through that experience. The second thing that Kim laid out there was to be a risk taker, take more risk, challenge yourself, really. And when I first read that and I started thinking about it, I kind of likened it to being a gambler, but I don't think that's the message that she's sending in the article at all. But you have to take risk, but your risks need to be calculated. They need to be measured. They need to be strategic. You need to have an intended outcome through those risks. And you're going to fail when you take risks. There's no doubt about that, but there's a lot of growth that comes through that too.
Right? I couldn't agree more. There's, risks for risk's sake is not terribly wise.
Right.
Calculated risks that where you've weighed the pros and cons, that's important stuff. Back to your point, that's how we grow. And within that, I'm a big fan of strategic quitting. I'm a big fan
strategic quitting,
and that's not my phrase. I can't but it's okay to quit stuff. It's all right. I think we get locked in this notion of commitment and seeing it through, but I don't know if we always think about what that really means, right? And what that is. And I've got kids, and we've had different discussions about like, when do I know that fill in the sport is not quite right for me, right? Like in saying, I don't care if you were the best basketball player ever or not. You want to quit,
right?
Amen. We'll figure out whatever it is for you, right? But you're on the team. You've committed through the season, so we're going to keep going through the season,
right?
And then you do whatever you want from there, right? And it's important to know when it's time to drop something, because what that's doing is it's keeping your resources and your energy from what you should be doing, right? And so we can't get ourselves locked up in this notion that just because I started to do something, I got to carry it through for the rest of my life. There's a point to call it and move on to something else. And that's okay. Right. That's how you learn and grow.
Yeah, I like that. Strategic quitting. I like that. I'm going to have to remember that. But, also when you take risk, the chances are you're going to have some failures along the way. But failure is okay as long as you embrace the failure, right? There's something to be learned through failure. And I think Kim used the term in her article of failing forward, right? Yeah, you fail, but what progress can come from that? What good can come from that? I mean, we all fail every day, right? And I think it's important for how do you respond to the failure? Are you going to just beat yourself up and talk negative to yourself, or are you going to learn through that experience so that the next time you're better, right? And you use the sports analogy, and I love using sports analogies, but you see that all the time in athletics. I mean, you fail, you lose, you get beat, all of those things. Does that force you to withdraw, or does that force you to work harder, right? And I think that's a critical component of, like you said, being a strategic risk taker, right? As long as you're doing it for the right reasons, it doesn't matter whether you find success initially or if you fail, as long as you embrace the failure.
And I think that's really important in this kind of management employment context too. Think about it. If you're an employee and if you know that if you fail, I'm doing the best that I can, right, and I know that it fails, and I know that my boss is going to come down on me hard, and I'm going to hear it. I'm probably going to hear it in front of everybody, right? How much incentive do you then have to keep taking those risks, right? And especially as we've all had to innovate. I mean, that's how organization be going anyway. But especially in these last couple of years, if somebody is not innovating, they're trying new things. They're in a tough way. And so, for a manager, just because this is the world that I live in HR, for a manager, if we're starting with that positive kind of self-talk and we're radiating that positive message out to everybody, and then also talking about it's okay to take strategic risks, it's okay to fail as long as that's well intended, you're trying hard. And now let's look at how we've learned from that. Now we're moving things forward. If managers are coming down hard on people all the time just because they took a risk on something, well, we're going to lose good people because they're going to get out. They don't want to be around that.
Nope.
And we are not going to make the progresses that we need. And frankly, the manager is going to be in the dark about a lot of things that could be pretty serious because those employees are not going to feel like they can trust going to him or her with those things. And that can be a bad spot to be in for any number of reasons.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. The third strategy, or the third tool that she lined out was, the importance of personal development and really making a commitment to improve yourself, to learn new things. When you're constantly putting yourself in an environment to learn, you're going to be more successful and more innovative, and that mental flexibility or the emotional flexibility is going to be stronger because you're always thinking, as you're learning, and especially if you're committed to learning. Personal development is really about strengthening yourself, right? And if you're doing that in the right way, the emotional flexibility is going to be a lot easier for us. You agree with that?
Absolutely. And I think in terms of flexibility in this personal development piece, if you can build that skill, if you will, that ability to be more flexible, it's only going to help you, because I start to think about whatever solution, whatever situation we're coming to, there's a number of possible solutions, and we really need to have like a toolkit, right? And every situation is not going to require the same response. I know in my world, there are times to come out strong. There are times to really engage and try to facilitate. There are times to shut up and stand back, right? And depending upon which situation there might be, I might need to use any number of those. I may use them all over the course of it, but I need to be able to be flexible throughout that. And that personal development of kind of developing those tools is going to help me out. So then when that situation presents itself, I have them, and then the flexibility is going to help me move off of one to the other, and make sure that we're able to apply the right tool at the right time to come up with whatever the situation calls for.
Yeah, each one of those situations that you go through it builds upon themselves, right? In order to strengthen the foundation for your ability to change in the future. I think that's good stuff. So there's a quote that, as I was reading Kim's article, and it reminded me of, it was given to me by a former boss of mine is actually when I left the Y in Sterling to come back in Peoria, which has now been about 5 years ago. One of my board members, when he learned that I was making the career change, gave me this quote that I've carried with me throughout, and I've used it, and I think it's so important, and I think it's relevant here with this conversation. So I want to share it with everybody and with you as we wrap up, and maybe get your thoughts on it. But this is what it says, and I'm going to read this because it's kind of long. When your desire is stronger than your fear, change is your friend. When your fear is stronger than your desire, change is your biggest enemy. There's a battle inside of us being fought over control of our lives. One of the biggest battles is between the desire to improve and the fear of change that is necessary to create it. When desire wins, you see change as an agent of growth. When fear wins, you see change as an enemy forcing you to do things differently. It's real, it's constant, and the winner defines your life. So embrace the change. Mm-hmm. You know, and I have found that to be so profound in my own life, because change comes almost daily in my world, and definitely it's regular. And if we're not ready to embrace it and to kind of grow through that process, it's going to eat us up. It's going to eat us up.
Mm-hmm. I think what struck me about that at the very beginning is it's stating that kind of this change is, and how you're approaching it, you know, right, where you're at is going to have is really what's affecting the outcome, is going to affect the influence.
Personal choice. Yeah.
And you know, this, and that's a wonderful quote. And it really kind of helps frame things up, you know, like this is the situation. Mm-hmm. This is the world that you're in. This is the thing that happened, whatever it is.
Right.
Now I've got to figure out how I'm going to respond to this. What does this mean to me? What am I going to do? Mm-hmm. And embracing it and understanding that this is the situation, and I can affect how I go forward and how I might resolve this, is, I think, incredibly powerful. Whereas if you're kind of shrinking back and trying to pretend like it's not happening, well, at best you're not going to grow. At worst, the thing's going to get worse for you.
Yeah, because the change is going to happen, either with you or without you. Yeah. It's probably going to happen. So you've got to find a way to kind of embrace it and learn through that experience. And I think when we do decide, when we make that choice, the I've decided approach, right? It's a personal choice that we make in each one of our lives to embrace it and to learn through it. We're going to be so much more successful through that experience. So, well, hey, thanks for being here again today. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure.
That wraps up this month's edition of Our Community. Hopefully it's been helpful to those of you out there. I encourage you to reach out to Erik if you have some HR needs, and we look forward to seeing you next month on Our Community.